The moonlit gathering. The crisp night air, usually a balm to Luna's senses, vibrated with an unfamiliar energy tonight. 1,000 scents, crushed pine needles, damp earth, the musky fragrance of countless wolves, mingled with the tantalizing aroma of roasted venison and sweet berries. Above, the full moon, a luminous pearl in the velvet sky, cast a silvery glow over the clearing, illuminating the grand moonlit gathering. Luna, a small, unassuming shadow herself, pressed further into the dense undergrowth at the edge of the clearing. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of anxiety that threatened to betray her presence. All around her, the unmated wolves of the Silverwood Pack and their allies from neighboring territories swirled in a magnificent display of strength and beauty. Their pelts, a kaleidoscope of greys, browns, and whites, shimmered under the moonlight as they moved with confident, fluid grace. Laughter, deep growls of greeting, and the playful nips of flirtation echoed through the ancient trees. She watched them, a silent observer in her own world of shadows. There was the robust warrior, Rorik, his shoulders broad and powerful, already surrounded by a cluster of eager she-wolves, and Lyra, with her sleek obsidian fur and eyes like polished obsidian, captivating every male she deigned to glance at. Luna felt a familiar pang of inadequacy, a cold knot in her stomach. She was just Luna. Her fur, a mottled grey-brown, was unremarkable. Her frame, slender and unassuming, she carried no prestigious lineage, no dazzling skills. She was a whisper in a storm, a forgotten stone in a grand mosaic. She had come only out of obligation, a quiet insistence from her elder Willow, who had seen the lonely glint in Luna's eyes too many times. "You never know, little one," Willow had murmured, her voice like the rustle of leaves. "Sometimes the quietest songs are the most profound." Luna had dutifully arrived, melting into the periphery, hoping to simply endure the night unnoticed, then retreat to the comforting solitude of her small den. She nibbled on a piece of dried meat she'd brought, its salty taste a faint anchor in the overwhelming tide of the gathering. Suddenly, the buzz in the clearing seemed to shift, to deepen. A hush fell, a ripple of respect spreading through the crowd. All eyes, including Luna's, turned towards the center where a magnificent wolf now stood. Alpha King Orion. His fur, the color of twilight, seemed to absorb the moonlight, making him appear both formidable and ethereal. His eyes, the hue of ancient emeralds, swept across the gathering, missing nothing. He moved with an effortless power, each step a testament to his authority and strength. A shiver, not entirely of fear, traced its way down Luna's spine. He was truly breathtaking. She instinctively crouched lower, pulling the shadows tighter around her, willing herself to become one with the gnarled roots and fallen leaves. Surely, in a sea of such vibrant, confident wolves, he wouldn't notice a tiny grey speck clinging to the edge. But then, Orion's gaze, steady and intense, seemed to falter, to pause. It wasn't sweeping the crowd anymore. It was narrowing, focusing, and to Luna's horror, it was directed straight at her patch of darkness. Her breath hitched. Had she made a sound, moved too much? Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm, a trapped bird desperate to escape its cage. Orion began to move, not towards the center, not towards the bold, flirtatious she-wolves vying for his attention, but directly towards the shadows, where Luna was trying to dissolve. Each measured step was a drumbeat of inevitability. The whispers around him died completely, replaced by a collective, breathless silence. Every wolf in the clearing seemed to hold their breath, watching the Alpha King's inexplicable trajectory. Luna squeezed her eyes shut for a fleeting moment, wishing the ground would open up and swallow her whole. When she opened them again, Orion was closer. His scent, pine, damp stone, and something uniquely powerful, filling her nostrils. His shadow fell over her, cool and imposing. He stopped just a few paces away, his immense form blotting out the moonlight. His emerald eyes, surprisingly gentle despite their intensity, regarded her. He didn't speak immediately, simply observed, and in that silent scrutiny, Luna felt completely exposed, stripped bare of her carefully constructed invisibility. Her fur prickled with a mixture of fear and a strange, unfamiliar thrill. Finally, his voice, deep and resonant, broke the silence, cutting through the thrumming tension of the night. "Little wolf," he said, his gaze unwavering, "why do you stand apart? Why are you alone in the shadows when the moon offers its light to all?" Luna's heart gave a violent lurch, threatening to leap out of her chest. The words felt like a direct question, a demand for an answer she didn't have, not one she could articulate in front of the Alpha King and the entire gathering. Her mouth felt suddenly dry, her tongue thick. She tried to speak, but only a small, pathetic squeak escaped. The silence stretched, thick with expectation, amplifying her humiliation. Her cheeks, beneath her fur, felt hot with a blush she couldn't hide. She wished, more than anything, that she could disappear, a confession under the moon. The collective breath of the moonlit gathering hung suspended, a tangible weight in the crisp night air. Luna, caught in the unyielding gaze of Alpha King Orion, felt every eye pierce her, every whisper of wind a judgment. Her throat was a desert, her tongue glued to the roof of her mouth. The warmth of the bonfire did little to thaw the icy grip of panic around her heart. Orion's voice, when he spoke again, was softer, a rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her paws. "Why do you stand apart, little wolf? The night is for celebration, for finding joy." She swallowed, a painful, dry rasp. The words clawed at her, desperate to escape, yet trapped behind a lifetime of self-doubt. Princess Lyra, from her perch beside the Alpha's throne, watched with an almost predatory interest, her ruby eyes sharp. Luna could feel the weight of Lyra's disdain, a familiar burden. I don't belong," Luna finally managed, her voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to the lively chatter that had moments ago filled the clearing. The confession, once spoken, felt both liberating and terrifying. It was the truth she'd hidden for so long, laid bare for the Alpha King and his entire pack to dissect. "I'm not like the others. I'm plain, unremarkable. I have no grand stories, no lineage to boast of. My fur is dull, my spirit quieter." She risked a glance at Orion, expecting to see pity, or perhaps even agreement. Instead, his expression remained unreadable, his golden eyes deep pools reflecting the moonlight. "Willow insisted I come, said it was important for unmated wolves to mingle. But I only feel like a shadow, taking up space." A hush fell over the gathering, deeper than before. Even the crickets seemed to cease their song. Orion took a slow, deliberate step closer, his presence radiating an unexpected warmth. He didn't scoff, didn't dismiss her. He simply listened, his head tilted slightly. "Plain?" he finally murmured, his gaze sweeping over her, not with scrutiny but with an almost gentle curiosity. "I see something else, Luna, of the quiet spirit." His words were a balm, unexpected and soothing. "I see a strength in stillness, a wisdom in observation. Your spirit may be quiet, but it is not dull. It is a deep, clear pool, reflecting the moon's truth without distortion. You are special, Luna, more special than many who loudly proclaim their worth." His words, so earnest, so utterly without guile, struck Luna like a physical blow. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, hot and unwelcome. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not truly. Not even Willow, who often saw her as a fragile thing to be protected. Then, to the utter astonishment of every wolf present, Orion extended his paw, a gesture of profound invitation. His paw was large, powerful, yet offered with a surprising tenderness. "Will you dance with me, Luna of the quiet spirit?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Lyra's perfectly sculpted jaw dropped, her eyes widening in undisguised shock and fury. Whispers erupted like a flock of startled birds, each one a tiny barb piercing the sudden, fragile silence. Never, in the history of the moonlit gathering, had the Alpha King chosen an unmated she-wolf for the first dance, and certainly not one who had just confessed her profound insecurities to the entire pack. It was a tradition reserved for high-ranking wolves, often for a chosen mate, or at the very least, a she-wolf of considerable standing. Luna stared at his outstretched paw, then back into his eyes, searching for a hint of mockery. A trick. But there was only sincerity, and a hint of something else, a quiet understanding. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild drum. To refuse would be an unforgivable slight. To accept was to step into a spotlight she had always meticulously avoided. Slowly her own paw trembled as she lifted it. She placed it gently in his, and a jolt, like static electricity, arced between them. His paw was warm, firm, encompassing. He drew her gently forward, into the center of the clearing, towards the musicians who stood frozen, their instruments silent. With a nod from Orion, the drummers slowly began to beat a rhythm, soft and steady at first, then building into a joyful, ancient melody. Orion led, his movements fluid and graceful, drawing her into a dance that was both traditional and uniquely theirs. Luna, usually clumsy and self-conscious, found herself moving with an ease she didn't know she possessed. His paw held hers with a comforting strength, his other resting lightly on her waist, guiding her through the intricate steps. She looked up at him, really looked at him, and found not the stern Alpha King she had imagined, but a wolf with kind eyes and a gentle smile. In that moment, surrounded by hundreds of watching wolves, a strange sense of peace settled over her. The music enveloped them, and for the first time in her life, Luna felt not like a shadow, but like a moonbeam, dancing in the light. A connection, unexpected and potent, sparked between them, a silent promise whispered under the vast, watchful moon. Whispers and glances, the morning air, thick with the lingering scent of pine and damp earth on Luna's fur, was soon eclipsed by a more suffocating aroma, the pervasive stench of gossip. It coiled like a noxious fog within the communal den, clinging to every wolf gathered for the day's hunt assignments. Each flick of a tail, every averted gaze, every hushed murmur felt aimed squarely at her. The profound hush that had fallen during the moonlit gathering when Orion had offered her his paw, now fractured into a cacophony of whispers. "Did you see? The Alpha King. With her? Just a plain wolf, barely noticeable." Though often inaudible, the word's intent was clear, sharp as a winter's claw. Luna, typically a creature of shadows, found herself spotlighted, an unwilling beacon of attention. As she approached the group, a ripple of unease spread, heads swiveled, eyes narrowed. The collective weight of their disapproval pressed down, heavier than any pack burden she'd ever known. Heat flared beneath her pale fur. The fleeting sense of belonging savoured in Orion's embrace had evaporated, replaced by the familiar ache of ostracism, amplified 1,000-fold. Several she-wolves, usually boisterous, exchanged pointed glances and muffled snickers as Luna passed. Kyle, a sleek, dark-furred wolf, deliberately turned her back, her posture a rigid statement of disdain. Another, with eyes like amber, scoffed openly, the sound cutting through the murmurs. Some wolves will do anything for attention. The sting was immediate, hunching Luna's shoulders instinctively. She yearned for the comforting anonymity of her solitary morning run, far from these judging eyes. Then, a voice, sharp and venomous, sliced through the murmurs. Well, well, if it isn't the Alpha King's new diversion. Luna flinched, recognizing the voice instantly. Princess Lyra stood a few paces away, flanked by a smirking Gareth and her usual retinue of sycophants. Lyra's golden eyes, typically glinting with playful mischief, were now molten pools of fury, fixed solely on Luna. Her sleek caramel fur seemed to bristle with barely contained rage. "I do hope you enjoyed your moment in the moonlight," Lyra continued, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "It was quite a spectacle, though one does wonder what Orion was thinking, choosing you." She gestured vaguely at Luna with a paw, as if Luna were an unsightly stain. Gareth snickered, a low, guttural sound. Perhaps he was feeling charitable, Princess. Or perhaps the moon had a strange effect on him. He glanced at Lyra, hungry for her approval, his tail giving a short, almost imperceptible wag. A tremor ran through Luna. Her tongue felt like lead, her throat constricted. She longed to retort, to defend herself, but no words would come. Lyra's audacious public humiliation rendered her speechless. To be the subject of whispers was one thing, to face such open, unapologetic hostility, another entirely. Lyra took a step closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr, yet still audible to those around them. "You know your place, don't you, Plain Wolf? Some traditions are there for a reason, and some wolves are simply not meant for the spotlight." She subjected Luna to a slow, deliberate assessment, making Luna feel utterly exposed and inadequate. An Alpha King needs a strong, noble mate, someone who understands the burdens of leadership, who inspires loyalty and respect, not someone who hides in the shadows and suddenly appears when a chance for status presents itself. The implication hung heavy. Luna was an opportunist, a schemer who had somehow manipulated Orion. The accusation stung more than any insult about her appearance. She had never sought status, never craved power. All she had ever wanted was to be invisible, to simply exist without drawing attention. I didn't ask for any of this," Luna stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She avoided Lyra's burning gaze, focusing instead on a small patch of moss between two rocks. Lyra let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, didn't you? Funny, it looked rather like you were enjoying yourself. The little mouse finally gets to dance with the lion." Her eyes flickered to Gareth, who nodded sagely, as if Lyra had just revealed a profound truth. The other wolves, though not openly joining Lyra's verbal assault, watched with morbid fascination. No one intervened. No one spoke up for Luna. Their complicit silence was almost as suffocating as Lyra's open contempt. A fresh wave of isolation washed over Luna. Willow, her only friend, was nowhere to be seen, likely still asleep. As the sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the den, Luna realized she couldn't remain. Every fibre of her being screamed for escape. With a final, lingering glance at Lyra's triumphant smirk, Luna turned and quietly slipped away, the whispers and glances pursuing her like a tangible weight until she was finally out of sight, leaving the buzzing, gossiping territory behind. Secret encounters. The cool night air was a balm against Luna's burning cheeks, a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the communal den. She had fled blindly, her paws carrying her away from the harsh whispers, and Lyra's venomous gaze until the familiar scent of the ancient oak grove offered a fragile sanctuary. Curled beneath its gnarled roots, the rough bark a poor substitute for Willow's warm fur. Luna hugged her tail tighter, the tremors in her body refusing to subside. She wished the earth would simply swallow her whole. A soft rustle from the undergrowth sent a jolt of alarm through her. Her ears swiveled, every muscle tensing. Had Lyra followed? Was the entire pack coming to finish the humiliation? But the scent that wafted on the breeze was not of vengeful princesses or judgmental elders. It was the rich, earthy musk of Orion, layered with the subtle sweetness of wild berries. He emerged from the shadows, not with the imposing stride of an alpha, but with a hesitant, almost deferential air. In his mouth, a small, carefully chosen cluster of plump, dark berries glowed faintly in the moonlight. He laid them gently before her, then sat a respectful distance away, his powerful frame oddly subdued. "These are from the sunken vale," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that resonated deep within her. "They only ripen fully under a new moon. My grandmother used to say they hold the light of forgotten stars." Luna stared at the glistening fruit, then at him. No one had ever brought her such a delicate offering, especially not the Alpha King. The berries were impossibly sweet, bursting with a flavor that chased away the bitter taste of Lyra's words. She ate slowly, savoring each one, the simple act a surprising comfort. Orion began to speak, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, as if sharing secrets with the ancient trees. He spoke of his youth, of the clumsy attempts at hunting he'd made as a pup, of the time he'd accidentally fallen into the icy river chasing a particularly elusive fish, much to his father's exasperated amusement. He spoke of the quiet mornings spent tracking deer through snow-covered plains, the feeling of the wind whipping through his fur, the satisfaction of a clean hunt. His stories were not grand tales of conquest or power, but intimate glimpses into a life she could only dream of. He painted pictures with his words, the scent of pine needles after a summer rain, the chill of a mountain stream, the distant cry of a solitary owl. Luna found herself listening, truly listening, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The harsh judgment of the pack, the sting of Lyra's words, all faded into a dull hum in the background. Here, under the watchful silence of the old oak, she was simply Luna, and he was Orion, sharing berries and stories under a star-dusted sky. He didn't ask about her feelings, didn't demand explanations for her retreat. He simply offered a safe harbor, a quiet space where she could exist without scrutiny. His presence, so potent in the communal den, was here a gentle anchor. She found herself relaxing, her tense muscles slowly unwinding. The fear that had gripped her began to loosen its hold, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. These secret encounters became their ritual. Each night, after the pack had settled into uneasy slumber, Orion would seek her out. Sometimes he brought sweet sap from maple trees, other times a perfectly smooth river stone, its surface cool and comforting beneath her paw. He always had a story, a memory, an observation about the world that he shared with her alone. He described the way the light hit the peaks of the distant mountains at dawn, or the intricate patterns in a spider's web dusted with dew. Luna, in turn, found her own voice beginning to emerge. She spoke of the quiet satisfaction of finding rare herbs, of the beauty in a perfectly woven basket, of the subtle changes in the forest floor throughout the seasons. She spoke of her grandmother's quiet strength, and the solace she found in the solitude of the woods. Their conversations wove a delicate tapestry between them, thread by thread. Away from the watchful, critical eyes of the pack, away from the expectations and demands of his alpha status, Orion was simply himself, thoughtful, observant, and surprisingly gentle. And Luna, stripped of her perceived insignificance, felt seen, truly seen for the first time. In these stolen moments, hidden beneath the cloak of night, a different kind of bond was forming, one forged in shared secrets and quiet understanding, far removed from the public spectacle that had ignited the pack's fury. The world outside their small, moonlit sanctuary might have been hostile, but within it, Luna finally felt safe, cherished even. Shadows on the border. The scent of pine needles and damp earth clung to them, a comforting blanket as Orion spoke of his youth, the quiet thrill of discovering hidden waterfalls in the northern mountains. Luna, emboldened by their shared evenings, found herself describing the intricate patterns she'd once carved into fallen branches with a sharp stone, a secret art she'd never dared to display. The air between them, usually charged with the unspoken hum of their growing connection, felt lighter, filled with the easy rhythm of shared confidences. Orion's gaze, when it met hers, was warm, a silent affirmation of her existence. He had just finished recounting a particularly clumsy attempt at hunting a hare as a pup, his deep chuckle rumbling in the twilight when a sharp snap of a twig broke the spell. Both wolves tensed, instincts flaring. A moment later, a blur of grey fur emerged from the shadows. It was Bram, Orion's beta, his usually composed features etched with urgency. His eyes, dark in the fading light, went straight to Orion, ignoring Luna completely. "Alpha." Bram's voice was gravelly, strained. "Trouble on the western border. A scout's just come in, mauled, says rogues, not one or two either. A pack of them, bold as brass." Orion's easy demeanor vanished, replaced by the formidable presence of the Alpha King. His posture stiffened, every muscle taut, radiating an almost palpable energy that prickled Luna's fur. The air grew heavy again, but this time with a different kind of tension, the stark reality of their world. "Mauled?" Orion's voice was a low growl, dangerous and controlled. "How many? Any casualties besides the scout?" "The scout didn't make it, Alpha," Bram reported, his gaze dropping respectfully. "And another patrol. 3 wolves. Haven't reported in. We fear the worst. The rogues were ruthless, apparently. Left a mess." A cold knot formed in Luna's stomach. The sanctity of their grove, the warmth of their conversation, evaporated like morning mist. This was the world outside her sanctuary, the harsh reality of pack life and its ever-present dangers. She instinctively drew back, feeling the familiar prickle of invisibility return, a defense mechanism against the looming threat. Orion turned, his eyes sweeping over Luna, and for a fleeting moment, the raw concern in them was solely for her. "Gather the warriors, Bram. The strongest, the swiftest. Arm them. We move at first light, or sooner if the moon is bright enough." Bram nodded, already turning to carry out the orders. "Yes, Alpha. I'll make the preparations." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to Luna. Perhaps it would be best for some to remain in the main den, Alpha, for safety. The implication was clear. Luna was a liability. Orion's jaw tightened. He held Bram's gaze, a silent command passing between them. "Every wolf capable of defending our borders will be called. No exceptions." His voice left no room for argument. "Go, Bram." As Bram melted back into the shadows, a shiver ran down Luna's spine. The air was alive with the scent of pine, but now overlaid with the sharp tang of impending conflict. Orion turned back to her, his powerful frame now radiating an intense focus, a readiness for battle that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. He was the protector, the leader, and a fierce current of responsibility emanated from him. He took a step towards her, his eyes searching hers, a vulnerability flickering beneath the hardened exterior. "I have to go, Luna." His voice was softer, a stark contrast to the command he'd just issued. This is what an alpha does. Protects his pack." Luna could only nod, her throat tight. The easy comfort of their stolen moments felt impossibly far away. The reality of his world and his role in it was crashing down. He was not just her confidant, he was the king, and his duties superseded everything. He reached out, his paw brushing lightly against her cheek, a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "Stay safe, Luna. Stay in the heart of the territory. Do not venture out alone. Do you understand?" His gaze was intense, burning with an urgency that went beyond a simple order. It was a plea, a silent acknowledgement of her vulnerability, and a profound statement of her importance to him. You are important to me, Luna. More than you know. Stay safe." Before she could form a reply, before she could even process the weight of his words, Orion turned and sprinted away, a dark, powerful silhouette disappearing into the deepening night, leaving Luna alone in the quiet grove, the echoes of his words, and the chilling scent of trouble lingering in the air. The forest, which had been her sanctuary, now felt vast and full of unseen threats. Lyra's web of lies. The scent of fear clung to the air, thick and metallic, even within the relative safety of the main den. Luna paced restlessly, her paws silent against the packed earth, each circuit bringing her closer to the entrance and the chilling reminder of Orion's departure. The memory of his warmth, his whispered promises, felt impossibly distant, replaced by the stark reality of his absence and the terrifying vulnerability it brought. She missed Willow's steady presence, a quiet anchor in the rising tide of unease. Orion had been gone for only a few hours, yet the pack felt different, the usual hum of activity replaced by a nervous, almost frantic energy. Pups were kept closer, Omegas huddled together, and the warriors who remained behind moved with a heightened alertness, their gazes constantly sweeping the perimeter. Luna knew she was meant to stay safe, but the den felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage, trapping her with her own churning anxieties. A sudden, sharp bark echoed from the clearing, followed by a ripple of hushed whispers. Luna's ears perked, a knot tightening in her stomach. It was Lyra's voice, sharp and commanding, drawing the attention of any wolf within earshot. Luna hesitated, then curiosity, laced with a familiar dread, pulled her towards the entrance. She peered out, keeping to the shadows of the den's overhang. Lyra stood in the center of the clearing, her silver fur gleaming, a stark contrast to the worried expressions of the wolves gathered around her. Gareth, always at her side, nodded in agreement to her every pronouncement. "This attack, so sudden, so brutal," Lyra began, her voice carrying a theatrical tremor. "It makes one wonder about recent changes in our pack, about disruptions to our long-held traditions." Her gaze, sharp as obsidian, flickered to the den entrance, a clear message aimed directly at Luna. A low murmur rippled through the gathered wolves. Lyra pressed her advantage. A scout dead, a patrol missing, all just days after the Alpha King chose an outsider, a she-wolf with no lineage, no history of loyalty to our lands. She paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. "Some say," she continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially, though still loud enough for many to hear, "that such sudden misfortune can be a bad omen, a sign that the moon goddess is displeased with the Alpha's judgment." Luna flinched, her heart hammering against her ribs. The words were poison, insidious and effective. She saw the doubt bloom on the faces of the pack members, the way their eyes, previously filled with worry for Orion, now shifted to her with suspicion. "She's weak," Gareth interjected, his voice oily. "Barely held her own against a common hunter, if the whispers are true." What kind of Luna would that make? One who would burden our Alpha, not strengthen him. The air crackled with their malice. Luna felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Lyra wasn't just spreading rumors, she was actively sowing discord, chipping away at the fragile trust Orion had tried to build for Luna within the pack. Lyra's carefully constructed narrative painted Luna not as a beloved chosen mate, but as a liability, a curse, a sign of impending doom. Our Alpha King is strong, yes, Lyra conceded, a faint sigh of concern. But even the strongest can be swayed, can make a choice based on momentary infatuation rather than the true needs of the pack, especially when he is so focused on protecting her. Her tone made the word her sound like an accusation. A young warrior, one Luna vaguely remembered from the border patrol, shifted uneasily. The Alpha trusts her, he mumbled, his voice wavering. Lyra rounded on him, her eyes flashing. Trust or folly? Our Alpha is out there risking his life, while she hides in the den, a fragile thing that demands his constant attention. Is this the strength we need in a Luna? One who pulls our Alpha's focus away from his duties? The warrior fell silent, his gaze dropping to the ground. The seed of doubt had taken root. Luna retreated deeper into the den, the weight of Lyra's words pressing down on her. She had felt Orion's love, his unwavering belief in her, but she was acutely aware of how little that meant to the pack without his presence to reinforce it. She was vulnerable, exposed, a target for Lyra's carefully crafted animosity. The pack's trust in Orion's choice, which had been tenuous at best, was now wavering, threatened by Lyra's relentless whispers. Each rustle outside, each hushed conversation, felt like a fresh assault. The usual sounds of pack life, once comforting, now seemed laced with judgment. She heard snippets of conversation. Bad luck. Never seen anything like it. His mind must be elsewhere. They weren't talking about the rogues anymore. They were talking about her. The fear for Orion was still a raw ache, but now it was joined by a profound loneliness and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. She was an outsider, always had been. Orion had seen something in her, something worth fighting for, but with him gone, she was just a she-wolf accused of being weak, a bad omen, a burden. Lyra's web of lies was tightening, and Luna felt herself sinking deeper into its sticky threads. A plot revealed. The cool, damp earth of the den offered little comfort, its familiar scent of dried moss and lingering wolf musk doing nothing to soothe Luna's frayed nerves. Days had passed since the disastrous council meeting, and with each setting sun, the whispers grew louder, more venomous. She'd heard snippets carried on the wind, a failed hunt, a spoiled harvest, a sudden sickness among the pups. Each misfortune, no matter how unrelated, was now being laid at her paws, twisted into evidence of her ill-omened presence. Gareth, his voice dripping with false concern, had even suggested to a gathering near the river that perhaps the moon goddess herself was displeased with Orion's choice, a subtle but devastating insinuation. Luna had retreated, seeking refuge in the shadows, but even there, the tendrils of isolation reached her. One evening, driven by a gnawing hunger she'd tried to ignore, Luna ventured cautiously towards the edge of the camp, hoping to scavenge some forgotten scraps. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. As she neared the communal fire pit, still glowing faintly in the twilight, she heard voices, Lyra's sharp, authoritative tone and Gareth's low, conspiratorial murmur. Instinctively, Luna flattened herself behind a cluster of dense juniper bushes, her heart thrumming against her ribs. "He's distracted, Gareth," Lyra hissed, her voice cutting through the evening stillness. "Always chasing after that outsider. The pack sees it. They're losing faith." Gareth's response was a low growl of agreement. "The rumors are spreading, Princess, about the blight on the crops, the scarcity of game. They're saying it's a curse she brought." A cold knot tightened in Luna's stomach. So it wasn't just her imagination. They were actively fueling the fear. "Good," Lyra said, a cruel satisfaction in her tone. "It's time to finalize it. The hunting challenge is in 3 days. Orion will be there, of course, displaying his prowess. It's the perfect opportunity." Luna pressed herself further into the shrubbery, straining to hear. The hunting challenge was a revered tradition, a test of skill and cunning, where unmated wolves showcased their abilities. Orion always excelled, a magnificent display of strength and leadership. "What do you propose?" Gareth asked, a hint of eagerness in his voice. Lyra's laugh was brittle, devoid of humour. "I propose we ensure our little Luna makes a spectacular fool of herself, publicly, irreversibly. It will be the final nail in her coffin, and in any foolish notions Orion still harbours." Luna's breath hitched. She felt a prickle of fear, but beneath it, a flicker of something else, a spark of defiance. "How?" Gareth pressed. "We arrange for her to be assigned the most difficult, the most dangerous quarry." Lyra explained, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Something beyond her meagre abilities. We'll make sure the terrain is treacherous, the scent faint. She'll either fail spectacularly, returning empty-pawed and humiliated, or worse, she'll get herself hurt. Either way, the pack will see her for what she is, weak, incapable, and a danger to herself and to Orion's judgment." A wave of nausea washed over Luna. They weren't just undermining her, they were actively endangering her. The thought of facing a formidable beast alone, in unfamiliar territory, sent a shiver down her spine. But then, a strange calm settled over her. The fear was still there, a dull ache, but it was now overshadowed by a burning indignation. "And Orion?" Gareth questioned. "He'll be furious if she's harmed." "He'll be furious, yes," Lyra conceded, a dark amusement in her voice, "but he'll also be forced to acknowledge the truth. That his choice has brought nothing but trouble. That she is a liability, not an asset. The pack will demand it. He won't be able to ignore them forever." As Lyra's words hung in the cool night air, Luna felt a profound shift within her. The shame, the anxiety, the desperate need to hide. It all began to recede, replaced by a fierce, unfamiliar resolve. She had allowed herself to be a victim, cowering in the shadows, letting their venomous words define her. But no more. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Orion, about the pack, about proving them all wrong. The hunting challenge. She would not only survive it, she would conquer it. She would show them her true strength, a strength born not of brute force, but of resilience, cunning, and an unyielding spirit they had so cruelly underestimated. Lyra wanted to make her look foolish. Luna would turn their plot against them. She would hunt, she would succeed, and she would reclaim her place, not just for Orion, but for herself. A quiet, burning determination ignited in her soul, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Secret training. A sliver of moon, a silver whisper against the velvet night, barely pierced the gloom as Luna slipped from her den. The air, crisp with the sharp tang of pine and the earthy breath of damp soil, usually offered solace. Tonight, it merely honed her edge. Gareth's guttural snarl and Lyra's poisonous murmur echoed, a rhythmic pulse fueling her intent. They craved her downfall, her humiliation. They would find a warrior instead. Her initial forays into clandestine training were clumsy. A phantom ache in her paws, a lingering ghost of yesterday's ostracization, served as a chilling reminder of the pack's cold shoulder. The forest, once a haven for quiet thought, now stretched before her, a vast, indifferent crucible. She discovered a secluded thicket, its undergrowth a tangled embrace, ideal for testing her newfound stealth. Luna deliberately slowed and deepened her breathing until her own heartbeat became the dominant sound in the hushed woods. Each paw fell with calculated precision, probing the earth before committing her weight. A dry branch, brittle with age, snapped under her tentative first step. She winced, the sound a startling crack in the still night. Unacceptable. Hours dissolved into a singular focus, refining her footfalls. She learned the subtle resistance of fallen leaves, the cushioned give of moss, the treacherous fragility of dry twigs. Her diminutive size, once a source of insecurity, transformed into an asset. She wove through brambles that would ensnare larger wolves, glided beneath low-hanging branches without a rustle. Her innate agility, previously an unacknowledged grace, became a deliberate weapon. Orion's quiet admiration for her quickness, a fleeting memory, ignited a small but persistent warmth within her. Days blurred into nights, Luna's existence became a relentless loop. Endure the pack's icy disdain, feign indifference, then vanish into the forest's shadowy embrace. She learned to track by scent alone, discerning a rabbit's faint musk from a fox's sharper, acrid tang. Stalking became a grim meditation, Gareth's sneering face superimposed on every scurrying creature, Lyra's venomous gaze on every startled bird. The consuming fire of her anger transmuted into a focused energy, a whetstone for her instincts. One evening, a fresh deer trail caught her attention. The scent was rich, the tracks distinct in the yielding earth. Her hunter's instinct, long suppressed beneath the weight of pack expectations, surged. She became a shadow among shadows, her gaze locked on the subtle shifts in the foliage ahead. The deer, a young buck, grazed peacefully, oblivious. This was it, the true test. Instead of a direct charge, Luna executed a wide circle, utilizing the wind to mask her scent, the dense undergrowth to cloak her approach. She lacked the brute strength to fell a buck head-on, not yet. But she possessed cunning. The narrow ravine ahead, a fallen log spanning a small stream, sparked an idea. She would herd it, initiating her approach from downwind, a faint rustle of leaves, a barely audible snap of a twig. The buck's head shot up, ears swiveling. It bolted precisely in the direction Luna had anticipated. She pushed her speed, not to capture it, but to maintain relentless pressure, guiding it toward the ravine. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but the image of Lyra's triumphant smirk drove her through the pain. The buck reached the ravine, hesitated for a split second, then vaulted across the log. Luna, a swift blur, followed, landing lightly on the other side. The chase continued, a breathless ballet through the moonlit woods. Finally, the buck, disoriented and spent, stumbled, collapsing in a heap near a thicket of ferns. Luna stood over it, panting, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She hadn't killed it, but she had outsmarted it, outmaneuvered it. Victory, sharp and exhilarating, coursed through her veins. Willow, finding Luna curled in her den, exhausted but radiating a new inner light, required no explanation. She simply nudged a plump hair towards her. "You've been busy," she murmured softly. "I smelled deer on you hours ago. A young buck by the scent." Luna met her gaze, a rare smile gracing her lips. "I didn't kill it," she admitted. "But I could have. I herded it, Willow. Used the terrain." Willow's tail gave a gentle thump against the den floor. "That's how our ancestors hunted. Brains over brute force. You always had that, Luna. A quiet strength." She paused, her gaze steady. "The others, they talk. About the challenge, about you." Luna's smile faded. "I know. They want me to fail. They want me gone." "Then you won't," Willow stated, her voice firm. "I'll watch your back. If there's anything you need, anything at all, you tell me. I can scout for good training grounds, help you with distractions, whatever. Just focus on what you need to do." A profound wave of gratitude washed over Luna. Willow's unwavering support was a lifeline in the churning currents of pack hostility. "Thank you, Willow," Luna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down. I won't let Orion down. I won't let myself down." The hunting challenge loomed days away, a dark cloud on the horizon. But Luna no longer felt like prey. She was a hunter, small yet fierce, a whisper of wind, a flash of shadow. They wanted to humiliate her. They would live to regret that choice. The hunting challenge. The pre-dawn chill gnawed at Luna's exposed fur, a frigid counterpoint to the blaze of purpose in her gut. This was her day, the crucible where she'd either reclaim her standing or be ground to dust beneath the pack's collective disdain. Around her, the clearing thrummed with the guttural murmurs and eager yips of unmated wolves, each jostling for distinction in the annual hunting trial. Luna kept a measured distance, her gaze anchored to the dense tree line marking the hunting ground's perimeter. Lyra's scent, a cloying blend of wildflowers and venom, drifted closer. "Look at the little opportunist," she drawled, her voice artfully pitched to snare attention. Lyra's eyes, typically a placid blue, narrowed to malevolent slits, dissecting Luna with chilling precision. Still clinging to the delusion of belonging, even after the Alpha King's diversions. Gareth, a deferential shadow behind Lyra, emitted a low, grating chuckle. His craving for her ruin was as stark as the dawning sky. Willow nudged Luna gently, her warmth a soothing balm against Lyra's cutting remarks. "Ignore her, Luna. Remember your training. Remember the buck." Willow's quiet certainty was a lifeline, tethering Luna amidst the swirling eddies of doubt and enmity. A deep, commanding bark sliced through the chatter. Bram, Orion's beta, stood atop a raised rock, his powerful physique radiating authority. "Wolves of the pack, the hunting challenge begins." His gaze swept the assembled multitude, a fleeting pause on Luna before moving on. "The first scent trail has been laid. Remember, cunning over brute strength. The swiftest and most resourceful will earn their acclaim. May the forest favour the worthy." The initial wave of wolves surged forward, a swift blur of grey and brown, eager to showcase their skill. Luna watched them recede, a coil of apprehension tightening in her stomach. She was in the third group, a mixed blessing. More time to stew, yet also more opportunity to observe the early roots. When her turn arrived, Luna drew a deep, centering breath, the aroma of pine and damp earth filling her lungs. As she stepped into the ancient woods, a hushed silence fell over the onlookers, broken only by Lyra's soft, derisive snort. Luna felt their skepticism like a physical weight, their silent verdict a ceaseless hum in her ears. She won't last. She's weak. She's merely a diversion. The forest unfurled a symphony of odours, decaying leaves, fresh sap, the faint musk of deer, and crucially, the artificial lure from the organisers. Luna moved with a newfound fluidity, her paws barely disturbing the fallen foliage. She focused, channeling weeks of rigorous training, countless hours spent honing her senses. The mock trail was a misdirection, designed to test raw speed. Luna knew better. Willow's counsel echoed, "Think like the prey, Luna. Where would it truly flee for its life?" She veered from the marked path, following a faint, authentic scent, the delicate aroma of fresh deer droppings interwoven with the earthy sweetness of clover. This was real. This was a challenge she could conquer. Her ears swiveled, catching the distant snap of a twig, the rustle of hidden leaves. A swift deer, its scent almost imperceptible, was ahead. Luna flattened herself, merging with the undergrowth. her mottled fur dissolving into the shadows. She moved in a series of silent, calculated bounds, her eyes scanning the forest floor for disturbed moss or broken branches. The deer was quick, its hoofprints shallow impressions in the yielding earth. But Luna's mind was quicker, anticipating its evasion. She didn't chase directly. She outmaneuvered. She circled wide, harnessing the wind to her advantage, her nose twitching, gathering a wealth of information. The deer was veering towards a thorny thicket, a natural barrier. Luna knew a bypass, a narrow game trail barely wide enough for a wolf, but it would put her ahead. She pushed harder, her muscles screaming, her breath ragged. Just as she reached the edge of the spiny maze, she saw it. A magnificent buck, its antlers still in velvet, its coat a rich mahogany. Young, yet powerfully built, its eyes wide with the primal urge to flee. It had been driven into a small clearing, encircled by the impenetrable thorns. Luna hadn't merely tracked it, she had herded it, subtly shaping its trajectory until it found itself precisely where she intended. Her heart thrummed against her ribs, a triumphant drumbeat. She hadn't relied on brute force, she hadn't chased with raw speed. She had employed her intellect, her patience, and her intimate understanding of the forest. The buck, cornered but unharmed, stood frozen, its breath pluming in the cool air. Luna approached slowly, her tail held low in a gesture of deference. This wasn't about the kill today. It was about the capture, the undeniable proof of her skill. She nudged its flank, gently with her nose, a silent acknowledgement of its spirit, before turning back towards the beta's horn, signaling the end of the challenge. The forest, which moments ago had seemed so hostile, now resonated with a quiet approbation. Luna felt a surge of empowerment, a fierce joy that silenced the lingering whispers of doubt. She was a hunter. She was worthy. Orion's return. A guttural roar tore through the glade. Not a victor's cry, but a raw burst of unbridled fury. Lyra's features twisted into a snarl, fangs bared, obliterating her usual composure. "You cheated!" she shrieked, her voice reverberating against the ancient trees. "That was no hunt! You drove it like a common cur!" Luna, still gasping from her exertion, stood over the fallen buck, its antlers hopelessly snagged in the undergrowth where it had finally collapsed. A profound satisfaction blossomed within her, a comforting warmth dispelling the lingering tendrils of fear and doubt. She met Lyra's venomous stare, her chin held defiantly high. "I employed my cunning, Lyra, a faculty you seem to lack." A subtle ripple moved through the assembled wolves. A few snickered, quickly stifling their amusement as Lyra's baleful gaze swept over them. Bram, who had approached to inspect Luna's kill, cleared his throat. The stipulations dictate a successful solo takedown. "There was no transgression, Princess. The buck is hers." His pronouncement was unequivocal. Brook no argument, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise, perhaps even a reluctant respect. Willow pushed through the throng, her face radiant. She enveloped Luna in a fierce embrace. "You did it, Luna! I knew you would." Her words were a soothing balm, easing the sting of Lyra's accusations. As the commotion subsided and Bram began the ritual of marking Luna's triumph, a delicate shift in the forest's energy permeated the clearing. It was a sensation well known to the seasoned warriors, a subtle eddy in the breeze, a nearly imperceptible tremor in the earth, the scent of burgeoning power drawing closer. A hush descended upon the gathering as every wolf instinctively turned north, towards the ancient passage that led from the contested borderlands. Orion. He emerged from the dense foliage, his magnificent silhouette defined against the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. His fur, typically pristine, was matted with dust and dried gore, a testament to recent skirmishes. His potent shoulders sagged with a weariness that transcended mere physical exhaustion, a deep-seated fatigue born of relentless vigilance and hard-won battles. Yet, despite his visible strain, his presence remained undiminished, radiating an aura of unwavering dominion. His eyes, the color of twilight, swept the clearing, taking in the scene, the gathered pack, Bram presiding over a kill, and then his gaze settled upon Luna. He observed her, still flushed with exertion, her chest rising and falling gently, yet standing tall and regal beside the splendid buck. He saw Lyra's hostile stare fixed on her, and the protective posture Willow had assumed. His steps, though heavy, never faltered. He moved with a predator's liquid grace, each stride devouring the distance between him and the heart of the clearing. The pack parted for him, heads bowed in deference, a low rumble of greeting echoing through their ranks. But Orion's focus remained solely on Luna. He perceived the ingenuity in her strategy, the keen intelligence in her eyes as she met his gaze. He could almost replay the hunt in his mind, comprehending how she had leveraged the terrain, the thick undergrowth, and her understanding of the buck's habits to outmaneuver it. It was not a display of brute force, but of acumen and patience, qualities he profoundly esteemed. A soft sigh escaped him, a sound barely discernible above the rustling leaves. It was a sigh of relief, of a burden momentarily shed. The weariness in his eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of something profound and deeply personal. He hadn't anticipated returning to such a tableau, to witness her triumph. He reached Luna, his scent, a complex blend of pine, earth, and something uniquely his own, enveloping her. His gaze, usually so intense and enigmatic, held a warmth reserved solely for her. He didn't speak, not yet. He simply stood, his tired eyes absorbing the sight of her, the irrefutable evidence of her strength and resilience. A low growl rumbled in his chest, not of aggression, but of a deep, almost primal gratification. It was a sound that made Luna's heart quicken, a resonance that vibrated through her very bones. He inclined his head slightly, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. It was a silent acknowledgement, a private celebration of her victory that bypassed the need for words. In that moment, surrounded by the pack, Luna felt utterly seen, utterly cherished. The exhaustion from the hunt, the lingering sting of Lyra's cruelty, all faded into insignificance. All that mattered was the quiet pride in Orion's eyes, a silent testament to her worth. A king's declaration. The scent of pine smoke and damp earth clung to the clearing, a testament to the night's chill and the dawn's promise. Bram, his voice a low rumble, finished the formal declaration of Luna's victory, his eyes holding a grudging respect that transcended his usual stoicism. Willow, beside Luna, practically vibrated with pride, her hand squeezing Luna's arm. Luna, still exhilarated from the hunt, met Orion's gaze across the assembled pack. His weariness was evident in the subtle lines around his eyes, yet his presence was as commanding as ever, a silent pillar of strength. But the moment of quiet triumph was shattered by Lyra. A king's declaration? What kind of farce is this? She spat, her voice ringing with indignant fury. She pushed past Gareth, striding towards the center of the clearing, her dark fur bristling. She cheated. She's an opportunist, not a huntress. To allow her to claim victory is an insult to every true warrior in this pack. A murmur rippled through the wolves. Some nodded, swayed by Lyra's conviction. Others remained silent, their gazes shifting between the furious princess and the quiet Luna. Orion, however, remained unperturbed. His eyes, the colour of storm clouds, met Lyra's with an unwavering intensity that slowly began to quell her outburst. "Lyra," Orion's voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of unquestionable authority, silencing the growing unrest. Bram has ruled. The rules were followed. He turned his attention back to the pack, his gaze sweeping over every face. Luna's kill was ingenious. She understood the prey, the terrain, and her own limitations. She adapted, she outsmarted. That is the essence of a true hunter. He paused, letting his words sink in. The silence was thick, broken only by the crackle of the central fire. Then, Orion's eyes found Luna again, and the shift in his demeanor was palpable. The regal distance softened, replaced by an expression of profound tenderness that stole the breath from Luna's lungs. "For too long," Orion began, his voice deepening, resonating with a raw honesty that captivated every wolf present. "I have sought strength in the obvious, in claw and fang, in brute force, in the roar of battle. I have believed the pack needed a leader forged in iron, unyielding and unfeeling." His gaze flickered to Lyra, then back to Luna. "But I was wrong." A gasp rippled through the gathered wolves. Lyra's face contorted in disbelief, her lips forming a silent, furious "No." "This pack," Orion continued, his voice now imbued with a fervent conviction that transcended mere words, "needs more than just a warrior king. It needs a heart, a steady hand, a quiet strength that sees beyond the immediate skirmish and understands the deeper currents of our existence." He took a deliberate step towards Luna, closing the distance between them. The pack held its breath. Luna felt her own heart thrumming against her ribs, a wild drumbeat of apprehension and an unbearable, soaring hope. She could feel the collective gaze of the pack, 1,000 eyes piercing through her, yet all she saw was Orion. "Luna!" Orion's voice was a low caress, for her ears alone, yet amplified by the stillness of the clearing. He reached for her, his large hand gently cupping her cheek. The touch was like a brand, searing away her fear, replacing it with an intoxicating warmth. "You possess a quiet strength that humbles me, a gentle heart that sees the worth in every life, that understands the true meaning of community, not just conquest." His thumb stroked her jawline, a gesture of intimacy that shocked some, thrilled others. "This pack," he declared, his voice ringing with a power that vibrated through the earth, "needs your wisdom. It needs your compassion. It needs your unique spirit." Then his gaze, heavy with devotion, locked with hers. "And I," he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper that still carried to the farthest edges of the clearing. "I need you, Luna, more than I ever thought possible. My heart belongs to you." A wave of reaction swept through the pack. A few young wolves cheered, caught up in the raw emotion. Older, more traditional wolves grumbled, their faces etched with disapproval. Lyra let out a strangled cry of outrage, a sound that was quickly swallowed by the cacophony. Gareth, pale and rigid, could only stare, his own ambitions crumbling before his eyes. Orion, oblivious to the storm he had unleashed, simply gazed at Luna, his pride and his love shining for all to see. He had made his declaration. The pack would have to contend with it. Standing tall, the collective gasp that rippled through the assembled wolves was almost as palpable as the shockwave of Orion's words. Lyra's face, already flushed with indignation, contorted further into a mask of pure fury. She opened her mouth, a guttural sound escaping, but Orion, without turning his head, merely raised a hand, a silent, imperious gesture that instantly quelled her impending outburst. His gaze, still fixed on Luna, was a beacon in the swirling chaos. Luna felt a dizzying mix of apprehension and soaring hope. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the jeers and whispers of moments ago fading into an indistinct hum. She was no longer the trembling wolf who had clung to the shadows, nor the determined hunter driven by a desperate need for acceptance. In Orion's eyes, she saw not just admiration, but a depth of affection that stole her breath. He spoke of her wisdom, her compassion, qualities she had barely dared to acknowledge in herself, let alone imagine an alpha king would find valuable. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Willow, her small frame practically vibrating with suppressed excitement, offered a wide, encouraging grin from the edge of the crowd. Bram, after a moment of stunned silence, cleared his throat. "The king has spoken," he announced, his voice surprisingly firm, though a touch of bewilderment still lingered in his eyes as he looked from Orion to Luna. Luna of the River Pack is officially declared the victor of this year's hunting trial. The murmurs shifted. Some wolves began to cheer, a wave of relief and genuine respect washing over them. Others, particularly those allied with Lyra, remained stony-faced, their expressions a mixture of outrage and disbelief. Gareth, who had been standing a few paces behind Lyra, his jaw clenched, now looked utterly deflated, his carefully constructed ambitions crumbling around him. Orion finally turned, his arm sweeping around Luna's waist, drawing her closer until her side brushed against his. The contact was electric, a silent reaffirmation of his words. He met the gazes of his pack, his expression resolute. "The trials are not merely a test of strength," he declared, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing. "They are a test of ingenuity, of spirit, of the very qualities that define us as a pack. Luna has demonstrated these in abundance. She has faced adversity, not with aggression, but with intelligence and unwavering resolve." He paused, letting his words sink in. "These are the qualities we need to lead us forward, to ensure our survival and prosperity." Lyra, unable to contain herself any longer, pushed through the murmuring wolves, her voice sharp with venom. "This is an outrage!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Luna. "She is an opportunist. She bewitched you, Orion. This outsider will tear our pack apart." Orion's eyes, usually a warm amber, hardened to flint. "Silence, Lyra," he commanded, his voice a low growl that brooked no argument. "Your accusations are baseless and beneath you. My decisions are made with the pack's best interest at heart, not by whim or enchantment. Luna has proven her worth, not just in this trial, but in her unwavering spirit." He looked directly at the disgruntled princess. "You would do well to remember that true leadership is forged in wisdom, not in petty jealousy." The sting of Orion's rebuke struck Lyra silent, her face contorting with humiliation and rage. She glared at Luna, a silent promise of future retaliation in her eyes. But Luna, for the first time, did not flinch. She met Lyra's hateful gaze directly, a quiet strength emanating from her. The fear that had once shackled her, forcing her to avert her eyes and retreat into herself, had dissipated. In its place was a burgeoning resolve, a fierce determination born from both Orion's declaration and her own hard-won victory. She stood tall beside Orion, no longer a shy, timid wolf, but a woman who had faced her demons and emerged victorious. The weight of Orion's arm around her was a comforting presence, a silent testament to their connection. She knew this was just the beginning. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, with whispers and resentment, with those who would seek to undermine their bond and question Orion's judgment. But looking out at the diverse reactions of the pack, the cheers, the scowls, the bewildered gazes, Luna felt an unshakable certainty. Their bond, forged in secret shared moments and now declared before all, was true. It was a foundation strong enough to withstand the external pressures, the political machinations, and the lingering prejudices. She was ready. ready to face the future, not as a victim, but as a leader in her own right, standing proudly beside the Alpha King, ready to help guide their pack. The wind, which had been whipping through the clearing, now seemed to settle, carrying with it the scent of pine and damp earth, a fresh promise of a new beginning. Luna took a deep breath, letting the moment and the enormity of it all wash over her. This was her place by Orion's side, and she would not falter. A new kind of peace, a new kind of quiet settled over the territory, not the oppressive silence of fear, but the hushed reverence that follows a profound shift. The scent of pine and damp earth clung to the air, but beneath it, Luna could now discern a subtle change in the pack's collective aroma. Less tension, more hesitant curiosity. She walked beside Orion, their strides perfectly matched, toward the heart of the main den. The morning light, filtered through the canopy, dappled their fur, casting moving shadows that danced ahead like fleeting thoughts. "They watch you," Orion rumbled, his voice a low vibration that resonated through her. Luna met his gaze, a flicker of the old apprehension stirring, quickly quelled by the unwavering confidence in his eyes. "And you," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "They watch us both." He nodded, a gesture of profound understanding. "They are waiting to see what this new path looks like." And so, they began to forge it. Their first days as a united leadership were marked by a deliberate, thoughtful approach. No grand pronouncements, no immediate overhauls. Instead, they focused on accessibility. The Alpha's den, once a formidable, rarely approached fortress, now saw a steady trickle of wolves. Orion would listen, his posture radiating authority, while Luna, initially hesitant, found her voice growing stronger with each passing interaction. A young huntress, her pelt still bearing the softness of adolescence, approached them with a stammered complaint about unfair distribution of the previous day's kill. Orion let her speak, his gaze steady. When she finished, Luna, remembering her own gnawing hunger as a pup, spoke. "Your concern is valid. Resource management has always been a cornerstone of our pack's strength. We will review the allocation process and perhaps create a system that allows for more direct input from those on the hunt." Orion's eyes, usually sharp and penetrating, softened as he looked at her, a silent affirmation of her contribution. He then added, his voice firm but even, "We will implement this starting with the next large kill. Fairness will be paramount." The huntress, stunned by the direct response and the promise of immediate action, bowed deeply before retreating, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Later that afternoon, Bram, still looking slightly dazed from the events of the trial, approached them. "Alpha, Luna," he began, a slight tremor in his voice. The Eastern Patrols report increased activity from the rogue wolves near the old hunting grounds. Nothing aggressive, but a persistent presence. Orion turned to Luna, his expression inviting her input. "What do you believe is our best course of action, Luna?" She considered the intelligence, picturing the terrain, the likely motivations of the rogues. A show of strength is necessary, but not outright aggression. We don't want to provoke a larger conflict if it can be avoided. Perhaps a rotating patrol of our most skilled warriors, appearing at unpredictable intervals, would signal our presence without inviting confrontation. And we should ensure our own hunters are well fed and rested before engaging with any potential threat. Orion's jaw tightened in approval. An excellent strategy. Bram, organize a patrol as Luna suggests. Select wolves who are not only strong but also possess a keen sense of observation, and ensure they understand the objective is deterrence, not engagement. Bram, accustomed to Orion's solo directives, paused, then nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes as he looked at Luna. Yes, Alpha. Luna. As the days unfolded, this dynamic became their rhythm. Orion, the unshakable foundation of the pack, the force of nature. Luna, the thoughtful architect, the whisper of empathy and foresight. Their combined presence began to reshape the pack's understanding of leadership. It wasn't just about raw power or swift justice, it was about measured responses, communal well-being, and a shared vision for the future. The pack, initially wary, slowly began to relax. The nervous glances at Luna lessened, replaced by curious, then acknowledging gazes. Pups, no longer shying away, would occasionally approach her, their small tails wagging, drawn by her gentle demeanor. Elders, who had once dismissed her as an outsider, now sought her counsel on matters of tradition and herbal remedies, recognizing the quiet wisdom she possessed. Willow, ever Luna's steadfast shadow, observed the transformation with a radiant pride. One evening, as the two sat by the glowing embers of a communal fire, Willow nudged Luna with her nose. "Remember when you thought you'd never belong?" Luna chuckled softly, the sound like rustling leaves. "It feels like a lifetime ago. But I still remember the fear, the doubt." She looked towards the distant outline of Orion, standing vigil at the edge of the camp, his silhouette stark against the rising moon. "He showed me that strength isn't just about the loudest roar, but the quietest resolve. And that peace isn't merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding." The territory, once a landscape of unspoken tensions and simmering resentments, began to breathe easier. The harmony wasn't perfect. The scars of past conflicts and prejudices wouldn't simply vanish, but a seed had been planted, a new kind of peace taking root, nurtured by a leadership that understood that true power lay not in dominance, but in unity, and that love, in its own quiet way, could be the most enduring strength of all. The pack, under their combined guidance, was not just enduring, it was slowly, surely, beginning to thrive.